China Lake bundle is a 25 telecrystal bundle available to both syndicate, agents, and nuclear operatives alike. The description is an old China Lake grenade launcher bundled with 11 rounds of various destruction capability. Inside this bundle, there are 8 loose grenades, and there are 3 grenades already loaded in the China Lake. The China Lake itself also comes loaded with 3 frag grenades, so that brings the total count up to 4 blast grenades and 7 frag grenades. What are the difference between these 2 grenades? Well, I will show you. This explosion simulates a blast grenade. The center is obviously the, center of the explosion, and in a 3x3 radius, it does full damage, and if you are at the cross-section of the explosion, it is also quite damaging. If you're caught on the outer edge of the explosion, it's not too insane, and remember, there are 4 of these blast grenades. So if I just detonate it, so as you can see, those caught in that cross-section without any explosion resistance are crit, and they're crit fairly well. If you're in the 7.5 modifier on the otherwise known as the outer cross-section of a blast grenade with no explosion protection, you will crit. If you're in the center of it, it doesn't quite insta-kill you, but you will asphyxiate and bleed to death rather quickly. And the person caught on the very outer edge actually only takes about 56 damage from the blast grenade. This is still the blast grenade, and the people are still in the same positions. Security hard suits, though, have 60% explosion resistance, and is one of the worst case scenarios to actually use your China Lake against. Technically, like, the research director would probably be the worst person to shoot with a China Lake, because they are basically immune to explosions. So I'm just doing security armor, because it's more common than the research director's hard suit, and still rather tanky. I mean, I don't even think there's a single station that has 6 of them, but either way, just do the same explosion, and with security hard suits, 1 blast grenade is not enough to crit any of them. Those on the outer part of the cross take 45, the inner 3x3 takes 60, and the outer edge only takes 22. So as soon as explosion resistance starts getting added to the equation, the damage goes down significantly. The China Lake, at least blast grenades, are a lot better against unarmored targets. Explosion resistance is on quite a few of the hard suits. Like, for example, the engineering hard suit has 50% as well, but like salvagers in their normal spaceonaut armor has no explosion protection, so you can very comfortably nuke them as well. And another thing that's obviously worth mentioning is that 2 blast grenades pretty much in the same place will space areas, and obviously spacing is very powerful. And as a nukie especially, you're going to have EVA. As a syndicate agent, you are blessed by RNGesus if you're able to get both a China Lake and good EVA protection. I guess realistically you could just wear an EVA suit and make sure you never hit yourself by accident. Frag grenades, which there are 7 of them, have a massive AoE. However, the damage on these frag grenades is not as high, so I'm just left the security hard suit on. Remember, 60% explosion resistance. 1 explosion going off does a lot of environmental damage, but at the epicenter only does 36 damage, and the outer edges take 24, and a further edge takes 21, and I'm not going to show every single tile because you're not going to be able to do... The explosion's too big to reliably calculate in a real fight and a real scenario. Also, explosions are different depending on if it hits walls, if the room's spaced, if there's tiles missing, if it's open room like this, if it's a closed room. So it's hard to give you exact damage numbers on how explosions work necessarily, but you're obviously... I don't think anyone's going to be shooting a China Lake at a 1x1. That's a lie. I've seen people do that. But either way, it is not very strong against armored opponents, explosion-resistant armored opponents. And if we just detonate it again, you can see some spacing does start to occur. You can see it underneath this person. If I do it one more time, you do start spacing more tiles. It's not quite as potent as spacing as the blast grenades, but you do have more of these. It hits larger areas, and I will now show this grenade against unarmored targets. And finally, the damage of a frag grenade to unarmored targets. Still not enough to one-shot crit a unarmored person, but it does do 90 damage to the center, 60 to an outer edge, and just obviously less on the further edges. And again, one shot will not space the floor at least, but if there's like a chain reaction of explosions, it will. That's enough about damage. There are other nuances that are not specific to China Lakes. All explosions will inherit this, but the China Lake is by far one of the most dangerous items to use in the game, especially with nukies, because you can often do quite a lot of team damage, if not straight up team kill your entire team, which I have seen happen more than once. For example, if you're using a blast grenade, which I'll just include because that's the easiest one by far to hit yourself with, if you have like a mini bomb, for example, on the outer edge and explode, the mini bomb actually will not detonate. If it's even one tile closer to the center, for example, I'll put in the 1.08 explosion and detonate it, the mini bomb detonates. And that's also the case if it's in your backpack. You can very, very easily gib yourself if you have any form of explosion on you and you're caught remotely close to your own explosive. The China Laker in your team, especially for nukies, I just keep saying nukies because that's where you often see the China Lake. If you're by yourself, just shoot them down halls. Like, don't worry about hitting anyone because obviously it's either yourself or a target. The nice thing about the China Lake bundle is this is full of grenades, by the way, and I can still put it at the center. The grenades are actually not explosive themselves, so that means you can't accidentally chain react yourself with your own ammunition. Just for good measure, I'll do it twice. As you can see, the ammo is still totally fine. You have no fear of accidentally completely obliterating yourself because the ammo for the China Lake is not destructible, meaning that it will not explode. Mini bombs will destruct at only 10 damage, meaning that they are very, very volatile to exploding. And C4 is destructible at 50. So if you have C4 on you, you could be a little bit more risky about it. I still wouldn't go using the China Lake if you yourself are carrying any other form of explosive. Things like flashbangs actually also will detonate if they get hit by an explosive, and these also only have 10 HP. So hitting a security officer with a China Lake, even the outer burst of it, can blind the officer if they're wearing a set cut, or blind nearby people as well. You can also use this for your own benefit, where if you accidentally clip yourself with a explosion of the China Lake, you might blind nearby people, or you could throw the flashbang and then try to detonate that way. Either way, chain explosions are an important part of understanding how to use the China Lake effectively. Even though you only have 4 blast grenades are actually really good at destroying walls. These walls are full HP, but since they do 3x3 damage perfectly, like as in the 3x3 around the center will have full damage, it actually only takes 2 shots to destroy reinforced walls. I know you only have 4 of them, but there are certainly times where you need to detonate something to space quickly. If you do it on a reinforced window, you will completely one-shot it, and that's also really powerful. Spacing things with the China Lake is a pretty vital part to surviving, because obviously you don't want to end up shooting somebody running at you in melee point blank with a China Lake. I mean, you might survive it if you have explosion resistance and they don't, but you really want to avoid hurting yourself anyways. Or the frag grenades are not quite as good at destroying walls, but they're not bad either. Frag grenades are not quite as good at destroying walls, so we'll do 1, 2, 3. So you can just kind of nuke a hallway if you want. As you can see, I mean, that's all 3 rounds of a China Lake if you want. If you just shoot at one specific point on a hallway, you can make this hallway an absolute nightmare. Obviously, you're spacing multiple rooms by doing this. The China Lake is by far my favorite weapon in this entire game. I like the audio. I like explosions. Now that it's a risky item, I really like the risk factor. Chain explosions are cool. Now that that's also a thing. What's not to love about a Vietnam-era grenade launcher in a sci-fi space game? I think that's probably why I like it. It's like super out of place tech-wise, but it's just, I don't know, it's just fucking cool. Anyways, that's all I got. Thank you for watching.